Washington Journal continues.
This is the New York Times editorial from yesterday, talking Darfur to death. Yesterday, the UN Human Rights Council at last expressed its deep concern over human rights violations in Darfur. That modest advance was made possible by the welcome willingness of several African countries to set aside their usual reluctance to talk about their continent's human rights problem. But the New York Times goes on to say it's not enough. Lauren Landis is with us. She's the senior representative to Sudan for the State Department. Ms. Landis, what's the status of what's going on in Darfur?
Well, the situation in Darfur continues to be quite dramatic. We're still very, very concerned and about the 2.5 million displaced population that lives in camps in Darfur, as well as the 200,000 refugees who have had to flee their homes and cross the border into Chad.
Is the Sudanese government allowing in peacekeepers and aid?
Well, the Sudanese government has signed up to the Addis Ababa Agreement that was signed on November 16th and has said, yes, we will look at this Addis Ababa framework with the 3 phases. They have initially implemented phase 1, which is the light assistance package, and have allowed some staff and advisors to enter Darfur wearing the blue berets and helmets.
And that means what?
Well, that means that the peacekeepers on the ground, the African Union peacekeepers, about 7,000 of them from a number of African countries, are getting some assistance and support from the UN.
This was today's Washington Post article. Splintering of rebel groups adds to chaos in Darfur. The situation is complicated, but there is a growing sense that the biggest obstacles to peace in Darfur are not only the Sudanese government and its militias, but the Darfur rebels themselves. After 4 years of conflict, the western region of Sudan has become fragmented among at least a dozen rebel groups, a development that leaders such as one of their leaders believe is the product of a clever divide and conquer strategy by the government, but that others say is the result of clashing egos within the movement.
The number of rebel groups is really concerning to us. We believe that the most important thing that needs to occur in Darfur is peace, and that we need to bring all sides to the table in order to work for peace. So far, the Darfur Peace Agreement only has a single signatory. And since that signing, there has been a further splintering, as your article today points out, of these splinter groups, of these rebel groups. We have tried countless ways to bring these players together and bring them to the table to push for peace. And we need to continue to work very hard on this, because until the rebels can stand united, we think it will be very difficult for them to negotiate solidly with Sudan.
Who has signed the peace agreement?
The one group is the SLA Mini Manawi has signed. He's the single signatory along with the government of Sudan.
Now, how often have you been over to Darfur?
Well, I've been to Sudan many times in my career. I have been in previous jobs providing food assistance, where half of my budget at the Office of Food for Peace as part of the U.S. government went to the Darfur or to Sudan. So I have made many trips throughout the last couple of years, and in this past year, probably 2 trips.
Who do you meet with when you're there?
We meet with a large range of NGOs, of course, the government of Sudan, officials. We meet with the UN, the NGOs, all of the players within the international community who work day to day on Sudan.
How many NGOs or foreigners are there in the Darfur region?
You know, actually you'd be surprised. There really are quite a few there. There are so many dedicated groups that you find in Darfur that despite all the obstacles, all the hardships that they work on today or face today, they continue to stay there because the mission is strong and they feel that they must provide assistance to this displaced population.
And do you find that what's your relationship with the Sudanese government?
The relationship with the Sudanese government is an interesting one. We talk with them, and it is important that we continue dialogue with them at all levels of the government. But we also send often a very, very tough message and say that this is unacceptable, that we need to see change, that we need to see peacekeepers in Darfur, and we need to see peace in Darfur.
Is there an end game in this situation?
An end game.
Is there an end to what's going on in Sudan? Or is it just a continuation of...
We hope very much there is an end game. If you remember, for many years, 20 years in fact, there was fighting between the north and the south of Sudan. 2 years ago, we were able to create a peace agreement, the Comprehensive North-South Peace Agreement. And that peace agreement has held and is continued to be implemented. So it took a tremendous amount of time to put that peace agreement together. But in the end, we have an agreement that's working. And we must remain optimistic that we can do the same for Darfur.
Our guest is Lauren Landis, Senior Representative to Sudan for the State Department. Numbers are on the screen, including our international line, 202-628-0184. For those of you who live outside the U.S., please allow 30 days between your calls. First call for Lauren Landis comes from Grand Rapids, Michigan on our Republican line.
Hello.
Okay, Grand Rapids, I'm going to put you on hold. Remember, you got to turn down the volume of your TV. We will come back to you. Ocala, Florida, Democrat.
Good morning, folks. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Lauren. I worked for the United States State Department as a young Marine in Central America and in South America and Argentina in the late 70s and early 80s. I'm a 10-year veteran of the Marine Corps, Lauren, and if you read Daniel Yergin's book called The Prize, I don't know if you've had time to do that or what your background is or if you're a political appointee of the Bush administration. Any case, you'll see that Sudan has as much oil as Saudi Arabia, and that's why the Americans are provoking Iran right now. Iran sits on a sixth of the world's natural gas and a tenth of the world's oil. So we usually, even the Falkland Islands with Argentina, that was about oil. And I asked a Marine who was in the Korean War and the Vietnam War when I was in Okinawa in 1977. I said, sir, at the end of my logistics course, because I was trying to go on a cruise, we call it in the Marine Corps a float, I said, sir, could I ask you what you thought you were in Vietnam for? And he said, son, I'll tell you what I was in the Marine Corps for. Gold, or in Vietnam, excuse me. I was there for gold, oil, and diamonds. And
thank you, caller. Is this about oil, Lauren Landis?
This is not about oil. I can assure you it's not about oil. You are right in that there is a lot of oil in Sudan, and probably much more than we know since it has gone. Much of it has yet to be explored or discovered, I'm sure. But we have sanctions against all U.S. companies, so there are no U.S. firms in there that are making any money or have any future in oil in Sudan. This is about peace for the people of Darfur.
All U.S. companies are forbidden from doing business in Sudan?
We have sanctions that require a license for any U.S. company to do business in Sudan.
And no oil companies currently are licensed or oil exploratory?
I know of no oil companies that are currently.
What's our presence like in Khartoum?
We have an embassy in Khartoum.
How many personnel?
I don't know the exact number, but it's quite well staffed, a very active political section, as you might expect, a good public affairs section, council section, all of the major components you'd find of any embassy in Africa.
Do you stay at the embassy when you're in Khartoum, or do you fly immediately out to Darfur?
We often spend time in Khartoum as well to meet with government officials, etc., and we stay in Khartoum.
Like in a hotel?
Sure.
What's that city like?
Well, that city is starting to really boom and develop, as you are probably aware, and it is a kind city, in that the people of Sudan are often very friendly and kind to visitors.
Do you feel safe walking around by yourself?
Well, I have to say, embassy security doesn't let me walk around too much, but my NGO colleagues tell me that they still feel comfortable in Khartoum.
And that caller asked if you were a political appointee. What's your State Department career?
I am not a career diplomat at the State Department, but I'm not a political appointee either.
When did you join State?
I have taken up this job just 9 months ago.
And previously?
Previously, I was at USAID, the Office of Food for Peace, where I worked on food aid.
Grand Rapids, go ahead.
Thank you. This is my pet corner. I'm very happy that to hear that you talk about the peace in Sudan and in Darfur. In reality, in Sudan, the war was starting in 1956. View of the Islamic people, they keep Islam as a manipulation and subjugation to handle everybody within the country. Therefore, in Darfur, the government is the one who manipulates people. They keep people in Sudan, let everybody to become an Islamic extremists. I was from Sudan too. I was a refugee, but I'm now a U.S. citizen. I was in Sudan. The war was starting in 1956 between the North and the South. Recently, there is a lot of people lost from Southern Sudan. It's like 2 million. Now about Darfur, almost 2 million people lost their life, and about 24 immigrants all over the world.
Anything there you want to comment on?
I would just say that I think the caller really points out the seriousness of the situation in Sudan, with the number in Darfur that we believe have been killed due to the fighting and atrocities, as well as the really serious condition of those that are displaced.
According to this article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, at least 450,000 people have died from disease or violence in this conflict. More than 2.5 million, as you mentioned, have fled to displacement camps. Independence, Pennsylvania, you're on the air.
Good morning. There is a lot of refugees around the world. Excuse me. We have over a million. They have 1 million refugees out of Palestine for the last 50 years. And I can't imagine anybody ever talks about those poor people. And the other thing is, I've been watching politics all my life, and I am stunned the people who claim that they believe in Jesus Christ come on the face of the earth and lie and deceive and manipulate in every direction they can do for that almighty God.
And caller, what does this have to do with Sudan and Darfur?
It's about money, sir. It's all about the empire, building an empire and a dollar. That's all.
Thank you. How do you respond to that? What do you say?
Well, I can just say that really, I don't know what the objectives are, but the U.S. government objective is just to bring peace to Darfur.
How much aid are we giving to that area right now?
There's $2.6 billion that have been given by the U.S. in humanitarian assistance in FY 2005 and 2006. We are by far the largest and most robust donor to the situation.
Is there any disagreement between the EU and Europe, and America and the African nations on how to proceed in Darfur?
I think everyone would like to see a robust response to Darfur. Exactly how you go about it, there is disagreement. We are definitely the leaders of the international community in pushing for action.
Are we considering more sanctions against Sudan, the Sudanese government?
Sanctions are a tool in our toolbox, and we have said, I'm sure you're well aware, that sanctions are something that we have to consider deploying further. As you know, we designated 4 individuals in April of 2006 and a number of Sudanese owned or controlled companies. And it is possible that in the future we could do more of this sort of action.
Danville, California, Republican. You're on with Lauren Landis of the State Department.
Hi, thanks, C-SPAN. This is a great show. I'm a little curious about why there hasn't been a coup or thought about a coup. I know that's all covert, but it seems like if there is the extensive oil reserves that there are, why isn't that an option? And also, how does this fit into Islamic extremism more generally? Because there's a racial element to this, and you haven't really talked about that. And then also, where is this $2.6 billion going? Is it going directly to private companies that are, distributing food, or just how does that work? And then what is the role of Israel, if any, in this?
All right. Lauren Landis, anything there you want to respond to?
Many
4
questions there. I think the most important point is that I should point out that the $2.6 billion is going to humanitarian agencies, primarily nonprofit UN and UN organizations. So a large part of it goes to the World Food Program and other US-based or international NGOs. It goes for food, it goes for shelter, it goes for all those things that make life in a very rough camp situation survivable.
He also asked about the racial element. Anything there you want to respond to?
The situation in Darfur is really complex, and I don't think that we really consider it a racial issue. I think that the comment the caller made regarding a possible coup is a very interesting point. We really do not see the potential for a coup. The reason being that there are a number of families in Sudan, the leadership of Sudan, that has a tight hold on that government. And so we do not see that as a very eminent proposition for Sudan.
Have you met with the president of Sudan? What's his name?
El-Bashir. Yes,
And you've met
President
with him?
Bashir. Yes, I have.
And your impressions?
He is a charmer. He is a delightful individual. He's very intelligent. He knows what he's doing. Our problem is that sometimes when you get the word or the decision out of Bashir, it isn't necessarily complied with throughout the government.
Do you have faith in him?
I have faith that he is looking after the interests of his government. I'm not sure I have faith that he will implement all the agreements that he signed up to for the hybrid agreement.
Augusta, Georgia, Republican, you're on.
Yes, lady, you are spinning this very lovely, very beautifully. You doing this. Here's the truth, okay? All right, I'm not an African American. I'm just a black woman living in America. And the answer to California's question is the white man syndrome from the colonization of centuries ago. Why? They have so many people now fighting and killing each other. How can you talk about United States sanctions when you have the whole pipeline way of the way they go and maim the African children for diamonds and all this stuff and give it to De Beers and all the other diamond places?
Caller, what would you like to see the U.S. role be?
Oh, you know something? Like I said, I'm not African American. I don't call myself that. I'm just a black American. I don't give two damns personally about the Africans because they sold us out and brought us here, which is fine. But now today, of course, they can come to this country and look down on us and hate us for whatever reason.
Thank you for your comments. Gettysburg, Maryland, Independent Line.
Hi. I just wanted your guest to comment on whether she's heard of reports that the World Food Program is lacking funds for people who escaped from Darfur into eastern Chad, and if she has any comment on that, on what is being done to address the situation.
Yes, I have heard of that. I think it's a very difficult situation for the people in the Darfur refugees in Chad, as well as for the World Food Program. I think only just a couple of months ago, there was probably about 35,000 displaced, as well as the refugee population. Now we see a situation where, although the refugee population has remained fairly stable, the number of displaced people in Chad, due to an overflow of fighting from this conflict in Chad, has increased the numbers. I understand that reports that there may be as many as 120,000 displaced Chadians. So that is a much increased workload for the World Food Program, much greater than they had planned on. And so I am sure that they're finding the need to appeal for additional food internationally to meet that gap.
I'm sorry, why are Chadians displaced because of this?
Well, the fighting in Darfur has spilled over into Chad. A number of the rebel groups, the Darfurian rebels, are based in Chad. And we've seen the situation between Sudan and Chad become very strained and stressed. And we've seen a lot of fighting on both sides of the border.
Are any other countries around the Sudan affected by this?
Well, I think Chad is the most affected, and we're watching the situation very closely.
Ossipee, New Hampshire. New Hampshire, you with us?
Me?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I called because I've been following the situation in Darfur since 2003 in February when all this started. And it makes me a little angry with the State Department that they are being so cozy with the government in Khartoum. Al-Bashir and his people in government are guilty of crimes against humanity. Eventually, I would like to see them tried for these crimes. This genocide in Darfur has been engineered by the Sudanese government. I would like to see the United States government put a no-fly zone over Darfur so that only aid flights can get in there. And I would have no problem, since the United States government already once sent missiles into Sudan when we thought somebody was making chemical weapons there. If al-Bashir cannot keep his attack helicopters and his bombers on the ground, I think that we can do it for him, and it doesn't involve any American troops being on the ground. It means bombing the tarmac so his planes can't take off. I understand we're giving a lot in aid, and I appreciate that. But one must understand that these people in Darfur can do nothing to take care of themselves. They are literally sitting in the middle of the desert under pieces of plastic with no way to take care of themselves, no way to get their own water, their own food. If the women and children, and 90% of these refugees are women and children, leave the camps, they are attacked, they are frequently raped, gang raped.
Thank you, caller. We are out of time. Lauren Landis.
I would just simply say that I very much agree that any perpetrators of crimes in Darfur really must be brought to justice. We really support that. I think the caller's depiction of the situation in Darfur is quite accurate, and as I've mentioned already, we work very hard to bring humanitarian assistance to those
What
affected.
about her characterizations of President al-Bashir?
Well, al-Bashir is probably not the kindest, gentlest person, clearly. He is the leader of this country that has stood against bringing UN peacekeepers into Darfur, and we hold him responsible for that. But on the other hand, we must continue to talk to this government. We must continue to work for a political situation.
450,000 dead. What's the prediction for more?
450,000, everyone has a number. I've heard numbers from 200,000, 450,000, and even greater.
What's the official U.S. number?
I think the official is at least over and above 200,000. That would be the number that we would use based on UN reports. Right. But the number is really, of course, not the most important thing. Whether we get the number right or not, it's a large number, and it's far too many. We think that there could be the potential for additional violence and additional killing. And this is why we not only work on providing the humanitarian assistance, but working so hard to bring a political settlement to the situation, because that is what is really going to end the violence. Getting UN peacekeepers into Darfur will also protect the civilians. It's the three components working together that are really essential.
Lauren Landis is Senior Representative to Sudan for the State Department. She works with Jendai Fraser, who's been on this program. Thank you. Tomorrow in the Washington Journal, we're going to continue our discussion of politics with Vaughn Verver, CBS News analyst, political editor. He will be here to talk about mostly the Republican candidates for president, as we talked about the Democrats today. And Paul Singer is going to be with us also. He's with Roll Call. And we're going to be talking about the earmark process on Capitol Hill. We'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Here's a look at what's coming up on the C-SPAN networks. Up next on C-SPAN, Newsmakers with Congressman Ike Skelton, chair of the House Armed Services Committee. Then the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on the firings of U.S. attorneys with Kyle Sampson, the former chief of staff to Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. Then on America and the Courts, a forum on women and the law. Right now on Book TV on C-SPAN 2, actor Joseph Phillips on life as a conservative in Hollywood. Then retired Lieutenant General Michael DeLong on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And live at noon, In Depth with author Alexander Coburn. Right, Eastern, opportunities for change in Cuba.